afternoon. I'm Daniel Guest, and welcome to the Imagine Golf Podcast. This podcast is dedicated to help you get the swing and the game that you've always imagined. Today's episode is brought to you by Imagine Golf and PXG. You can go to our site, Imagine Golf, to see all of our offerings, including our free drills, our practice plans, our golf ebooks and videos, or to book a lesson with me at our state-of-the-art studio right outside of Philadelphia, or virtually through our partner, the Golf Live app.com, from anywhere in the world, actually. And you can sign up for our free tips and videos that go out once a week, every week, by simply dropping us your email. Hey, look, this is going to be an interesting topic. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of positive and negative comments from this, but it's entitled Grip It, Rip It, Why You Should Almost Always Hit Driver. And I can testify that I've done both, right? I've always used my driver, and I've always gripped it and ripped it. And then I've also played really conservative at different points in my golf career. And what's interesting is that, nowhere more evident is golf a strategy game than on the tee box, right? And as controversial as it may sound, golf is about proximity to the hole, right? You've got to get the ball closer to the hole so that you can score. And the only way to do that is hit that far. And, no doubt with the driver, you have the opportunity to do just that. And I think it's definitely, conventional wisdom might even suggest that, like, playing it safe, with your irons and fairway woods and on the tee box is better, right? Keeping it in play is better. Well, it is keeping it, we can't have penalty strokes, but, on the fairway and keeping it in play, with smaller clubs is better. But there's no data that suggests that that's accurate, right? There is absolutely no data that says that's true. And quite opposite, there is plenty of data now that says the further you hit it, as long as you keep it in bounds, we can't have penalty strokes, but as long as you keep it in bounds, you're going to score lower, right? Hank Haney famously told Tiger Woods, "Hey, Tiger, the best drives, your best drives are the ones you can find." And I think if you just took that advice right there, right, from one of the Hall of Fame golf coaches ever, best Hall of Fame golf coaches ever, that would be enough. But let's just dive in a little bit and talk to you about why it is always better to hit driver. And I caveat that almost, and we'll talk to you about a couple times where maybe it's not, the best play. But by and large, all right, we're going to give you, I think I wrote down like 5 or 6 different reasons why you should absolutely hit driver, right? Well, the first is, I already mentioned, is distance, right? If you maximize distance, you in turn minimize strokes. Point paragraph. There's no doubt about it. There's 100% correlation to that. The further you hit the golf ball, the shorter the golf course becomes. The shorter the golf course becomes, the shorter shots that you have is into the greens, scoring irons, if you would, and by and large, you'll score better. So by maximizing that distance, you almost always shorten your approach shots, and then by doing that, you definitely increase your chances of hitting greens and getting closer to the pin. That's really it. I mean, it's no rocket science, right? The further you hit it, the easier this game becomes, right? And by the way, that doesn't mean you have to hit it in the fairway, right? You just have to find it, right? So hit it far and hit it long, right? Number 2, equipment, man. Today's drivers, modern drivers in general, are way more forgiving than they used to be, right? I remember telling my son, who's now 24, we're going back probably like 10, 15 years ago, man. We're playing golf, and I crushed one, hit it right dead center of the club. And I'm like, man, I hit that right on the screws. And he's like, what the heck does that mean? Right? I said, dude, the clubs used to be made of wood and had, 4 or 5 or sometimes even 6 screws on the face of a golf club. And they were in the center of the face. So if you hit them on the screw in the center, you were effectively hitting it on the screws. And it's a common term, and people still use it to this day. But today's drivers, man, are more forgiving than ever. They have larger sweet spots. The technology that absolutely helps you minimize penalties or a penalty, for lack of a better, for off-center hits is like never before. So you don't have to hit it on the screws or in the center of the face anymore to launch the golf ball, right? I played this weekend on Saturday, and I hit a couple shots that I could see the ball made a mark right on the toe of the golf club, and I still hit it like 240, 250, right? So with that in mind, man, as long as you're not topping the shot or hitting it off the heel by and large, you're going to be better off than any other club in your bag. So it is a very forgiving club. and you have more surface to actually strike the golf ball. So they're definitely, like I said, number two is definitely more forgiving in the technology today. So, um, and number three, look, the fairway isn't always the goal, right? I mean, well, I've hit so many good shots from the first cut of rough or from the rough. Um, because I think it's like sitting up. I feel confident about it. It's not a tight lie, if you would. So the fairway sometimes is overrated, right? I mean, accuracy is definitely important, right? And I think hitting the fairway by and large, right, is good. But modern courses today, and when I say modern courses in the last 25 plus years, and even if they weren't built in the last 25 years, they're groomed to be different or to be modern. They're groomed differently, they're cut differently, they're managed differently than they were 25 years ago. So that even balls that are slightly missed, are almost perfect shots. And there's plenty of times where the fairway is exceedingly wide, at the 220 mark, 250 mark for a reason to speed up play, right? So don't be afraid to take that aggressive line with your driver. All right. It'll definitely reward you more times than not. And by the way, while we're talking about taking that aggressive line, if you would, make sure you're playing your shot shape, whatever your natural shot shape is, right? You should only have one, right? So I'm constantly doing playing lessons with double digit handicappers, and even people like 20 handicap, and we'll roll up to a dog leg left or the whole curves a little bit to the left. They constantly hit the ball relatively straight or push it, and now all of a sudden they're going to try to draw it, or just the opposite. They always draw it and they're going to try to fade it now. And I'm just thinking, man, why? Why end up with that dreaded double cross type of shot where you're trying to do one thing and you do a complete the other, and because of that, it's a double miss, if you would, right? So play your shot shape. You should have one, and you should play it. Now you should line up accordingly, right? So if you draw the ball, you may want to stay to the right side of the tee box a little bit more, and vice versa. But play that one shot shape, and you'll definitely be a more consistent driver of the ball. All right, number four is another easy one. Anyone that's hit a great drive understands the mental advantage of just that, right? Dude, there is nothing like crushing a drive. I mean, there absolutely nothing like crushing your drive, even if it doesn't go down the middle. Again, going back to my own personal game last week, there were some drives that I absolutely murdered them. And murder for me is like 270, 280 plus, right? And they didn't always end up in the middle of the fairway, but they were way long, man, way long. And it's a good thing, right? It's when it's that feeling that like you've accomplished something. It makes the hole so much easier. Not only from a statistical standpoint, because you hit the ball 280, the average hole is 350. You have a much shorter shot in and whatever, right? But just the feeling of getting something accomplished, from the tee box with a driver, is mentally positive. There is no anyone that's ever said, you drive for show, putt for dough, hasn't bombed a bunch of drives or isn't a good driver of the golf ball, right? And by the way, we know that's not true either, right? Because that, like we just mentioned in number one, right? The further you drive the ball, the better you drive the ball, the better you score. So while putting's crazy important, I'll give you that, and probably the most important, but driving is a big deal. Number five on my list, I kind of hit on it already. Is like it's just more fun. I mean, let's be honest. Hitting driver is fun, right? It's exhilarating. It feels great. It's great to watch the ball cruise. So far you can barely see it. So I think people should embrace that, and I think they should go for it. They should absolutely embrace and know that when they're going for it, right? And by the way, everything has to be in line, right? You can't be I'm not talking about someone that's an absolute horrible. If they hit 14 drivers on the golf course, 13 of them would be out of bounds. I'm not talking about that guy. I'm talking about the person that is just a little bit wayward with their drives. Every once in a while gets a penalty stroke, or is constantly slicing or something like that. We got to figure that out, right? But by and large, we need to make sure that we're hitting driver whenever we can. And it's definitely going to lead to more fun. And ultimately, really, that's what it's all about. There's nothing like having fun on the golf course. And by the way, there's nothing worse than spending 4 hours out there and beating your head against the wall and not having fun, right? And just when you say it out loud, what's the point? Right? So let me, those are the top 5 reasons that I'll give you, right? Um, to hit drive or to build a case to hit driver all the time. And by the way, just a little caveat, there is no data that says that those that dial back, in other words, they hit a 3 wood, right, instead of their driver, because they can keep their 3 wood in more, and I'm doing air quotes as we speak, in control. There is no data that they score better. None. So why not then? You got no excuses. I know it feels different, right? And you may in fact keep it in play more, meaning in play in the fairways more, but you're 60 plus, 70 plus, 80 plus yards back. All right. I've played with countless individuals that do that. In fact, again, I just played with a guy 2 weeks ago, hits his 3 wood off the tee box every time. He was constantly anywhere from 60 to 100 plus yards behind us. Right. So there's no way that guy's going to beat me on any day, even on my worst day. There's no way he's going to beat me because the advantage is mine. I'm 100 yards in front of him on 14 holes. I'm going to win every time. So, but there are a couple reasons to dial it back. Look, super tight fairways, right? I live in the Northeast here, and we have some courses that are 100 plus, 150 plus years old, and these courses are on smaller plots of land, and they have tight fairways. So, and there's lots of trees sometimes, right? So, if it's a tight fairway, extremely narrow, and the risk of missing might, definitely outweigh the reward of the extra distance, then yeah, put it in the bag, keep it shelved. I get it, right? Um, but in the absence of that, grip it and rip it. Force carries, right? If there's a hazard that you can't carry with your driver, choose a club that guarantees a safe landing, right? So, an example, the golf course designers will put a lot of creeks, a lot of ponds, a lot of ravines at, the 220, 250 mark, right? Well, look, I mean, even the drive that I bombed 280 that I was telling you about, it probably didn't carry 250. So that would have been wet. So, I got to then play accordingly, right? I can't get sucked into, oh, I normally, I've hit a 300-yard drive because I have, but so I'm going to go for it, right? I'm going to try to carry this 250 drive here. It's just stupid. Just when we say it out loud, stupid, right? So there's a perfect example of when to shelf the driver and hit something else. Um, and then if there's the proverbial trouble, man, like if there are hazards, if there are bunkers. Again, many of these designers put these bunkers as strategic distances, right? So fairway bunkers aren't my strength, right? For sure, right? And I can definitely tell you, especially as I got older, the more times I find myself in fairway bunkers, the less I score, right? Or excuse me, the more I score, right? So yeah, just keep that in mind, right? The layup type of club or the shorter club might be a smarter play there, right? That also would pertain to like dog legs, right? Again, getting back to playing lessons, I can't tell you how many times, it's a super, maybe the carry or the initial yardage, if you would, off the tee box goes like 100 or 150 yards, and then it immediately dog legs run in one direction. And I see the student, teeing up like they're gonna, just, cut the corner, if you would. You can't even see the corner, right, of the green. You can't even see the fairway. That's how hard it turns left or right. And they're gonna cut it. No, you're not. Right? No, you're not. You're gonna hit it in the trees, is what you're gonna do. And it's a +1 and probably more like +2 or 3 on that hole, if you would, for that one stupid mistake. So, but if you have that kind of trouble lurking, then you should probably keep the driver in the bag. Um, but even if one of these three or two of these present themselves, you're still going to be hitting 10 plus drivers on average, right? So we got to practice it. We got to practice it properly. We got a whole nother podcast on that. I'm not going to get into that a whole lot right here, but I think it's safe to say that we built a pretty good case for hitting driver, right? In almost all situations, the benefit of hitting the driver outweigh the risks by far. And I think if you embrace and kind of have an aggressive mindset and trust your swing and trust your equipment, you can definitely unlock some greater distance. I think you should worry about your attitude. I think you should worry about your setup. I think you should make sure you're taking dead aim. The smaller the target, the better. And a target that the second you glance up, you can see it. That's the target. Those are better targets. Um, Make sure you got the driver dialed in. 90% of all drivers today are adjustable in some way, shape, or form. And 80% of you guys that buy these adjustable drivers have never adjusted at one time. And again, just when you say that out loud, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. We should have the driver adjusted not only for our own game, but maybe on certain occasions. If I'm as an example, about 3 weeks ago, I'm playing, and all of a sudden I'm fading the ball way more than I'm comfortable with, and a simple closing of the club, on a driver today, most drivers, if you raise the loft, you in effect close the face, and before you know it, I'm hitting dead straight bombs. Man, it was fantastic, right? Absolutely fantastic, and probably would not have happened if I did not adjust. I don't think I was going to be able to work it out on that given day. But definitely, embrace the driver. One last thing I forgot to talk about. Most people, most amateur golfers, if it's a windy day, they'll start doing something different with their shots. Like they'll tee the ball down lower, or they'll put it further back in their stance, or they'll dial the loft down or whatever. And if you're a double digit handicapper, the data says stop doing that, because you're changing everything. You're changing the dynamics of your swing. You're changing your swing plane. You're changing the physics. You're changing what you do normally. And all those changes do not lead to a better struck golf ball. They just don't. So it doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what you feel or what you've read or what you've watched. The data says otherwise. So keep your driver the same, right? Keep your shots the same. Keep your routine the same. Have that one shot shape. Have that one pre-shot routine. Have that one practice swing. And by the way, I keep going by the way today, but by the way, a practice swing is a rehearsal for the actual swing. It is not some laissez-faire, lame-o swing that I see a lot of guys do, like a warm-up swing, right? There's nothing wrong with a warm-up swing, right? There's nothing wrong with trying to be a little bit more limber, and maybe it's a mental thing. But if you're at the tee box and you're taking your practice swing is 50 or 70% of what your normal swing is, and you don't even follow through on it. So there again, it's probably like more like 50% of your total production of your swing. That's not a practice. What are you practicing for, right? You're practicing to hit the ball 110 yards, right? So to think about it, right? You take this lame ass practice swing. It's about 50% of what you normally do. Your normal driver speed is around 100, and you're swinging about 65, right? You don't even follow through. You don't get your weight distributed from your back foot to your front foot, and then you go to hit your regular shot. I mean, you didn't really practice anything, right? So let's and now the more I think about it, I should do a whole podcast on just that. But let's take an aggressive practice swing. A rehearsal swing is a better term, if you would. And then let's go look at our target and let's go in there and grip it and rip it, man. I guarantee you, if you'll do that, more so, right? And not just when I say grip and rip it, I'm not saying you don't have a plan. You just walk up there, put the tee in the ground and hit it. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying have a plan. Pick the spot on the tee box where you need to be to maximize the chances that you keep it in the fairway, if you would. Set up appropriately. Make sure your mental aspect, your mind is in check, if you would, and then go for it. And I guarantee you, if you'll do that and do just some of the things that we talked about on today's podcast, that you'll absolutely realize that you're way, way, way better off hitting driver than not hitting driver. So, well, there you have it. Thanks. That's today's podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Hit the follow button wherever you get your podcasts. We're on all the directories. Be sure to check out our site, imaginegolf.com. We got a new book coming out. We just posted an article that we had published in U.S. Business News on Friday. So check that out. It's a pretty favorable article, but a pretty long article. I was shocked. So check that out. That's on there. And you can follow us on all the social media platforms. We're on all of them. And here's getting you the swing and the game that you've always imagined.